That's a gay-ass podcast.
What? That's a gay-ass podcast. A what? A really, really, really gay podcast that we call That's a Gay-Ass Podcast.
That's a gay-ass name for a gay-ass podcast.
Welcome back to That's a Gay-Ass Podcast, the podcast that asks, whose fault is it that you're gay? It is me, Eric Williams, for the first episode of 2025 with my friend Aram, who you might know as the sex god himself, Adam Ramzi. That is right. We have a very horny and very deep conversation, which I guess like category is soul and whole. Anyone? Before we get into the episode, though, can I just say, this year is already looking to be incredible with the guests that we have lined up. They are gaggy. So if you are not subscribed either on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the podcast there. And you got to subscribe to the Gay Ass Patreon, where the horniest conversations take place with some of your favorite follows. That's right. On the Slutdom, there is no shame, only sex. Now, for this episode with Adam Ramzi, we discuss the first hairy chest that he lusted over. We get into the issue with my scruff profile. It's tough. We also talk about how Adam was discovered by one of the biggest porn studios in the country while studying to be a literal therapist. And at the end of the episode, Adam gives us a tease into who his current boyfriend is, which is someone you very well may already follow. Enjoy this episode, y'all, with Adam Ramzi. It's the first episode of 2025 with my friend Aram, who you know as Adam Mother Trucking Ramzi. Aram, welcome to That's a Gay-Ass Podcast, and happy 2025. What are we manifesting for this year? What's the word for 2025, Aram?
Happy 2025 to you. Wow, that's actually a really good question. I usually end years with words, but let's try starting with one. Right now, in particular for me, it's calibration.
God, you're so not only hot, but also deliciously deep. Calibration. Now, when I hear the word calibration, I'm thinking alignment with the uni. Is that what we're saying?
Absolutely. In so many ways. Just to give you a little background of where I'm at right now. I don't know if you could see behind me. Things are a little messy. I just moved into my own apartment. I haven't lived alone in almost 5 years.
Wow.
And the last year was one of the best and worst years of my life. It was just a very tumultuous year.
I feel that.
A lot of growth, a lot of steps, a lot of self-sabotage. And then it culminated in December when I had just like so many things on my plate, and also orchestrated this big move into my own place. I was living with a roommate for a while. It was a great setup, but it was one that I knew I needed to walk away from.
Yeah.
And that was, in your backyard.
No, literally my backyard. I think we're gonna say like 96 feet behind me is
yes,
where
absolutely.
You
I'm pretty sure I could see your balcony from my balcony at my own place.
And by the way, it was an honor to feel your stare. I think though that like there's two things we want to get into with this. Number one is that I think that when it comes to the growth of it all, there are going to be the growing pains, and I myself have felt that very much in 2024 was a year of like exciting growth, but then of course it comes like a bunch of loss and maybe a little grieving sitch, but then on the other side there's like beautiful excitement, and I'm very excited for you to have your own space. But since we have referenced us living so close for so long, can you tell me any notes on my scruff profile? What do I need to change?
Oh gosh, you know what, you're doing great. I mean, you tell me. How's it working for you?
I was just fishing for you to be like, it's fine.
Hey, you're hot and sexy. You know what? Actually, how about this? I would say show more personality on that scruff profile. I want to know like more than just like, here's my shirtless body and I live here in this neighborhood.
What are you talking about? I only wear turtlenecks in my scruff profile. How dare you?
Very sexy.
No, I think you're actually onto something there, that was an absolute jokey question, but now I'm going to really look within and tell you that I think my outward like scruff profile and just like sort of like relationship to like horniness, which I can learn from you, my relationship to it is like, am trying to lean into the sex positivity of it all and trying, but I still have, I think I'm still working through layers of shame. I like still get afraid when I will post on, the Patreon for this. We interview people about their sex lives and I love it so much, but sometimes I'll feel insecure or nervous about posting about it, like on my Instagram, for example, because I'm like, wow, am I going to be perceived as a certain way? So I think like I can learn from you how to sort of lean away from the fear of that, because I don't know, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid of, I guess, like judgment of being considered only one thing. But I feel like do you ever? What's your relationship to shame now? Are you able to, like, you seem to live pretty out loud and proud?
I try to. I still deal with that myself. Actually, there's definitely a part of me that has really struggled. It kind of comes about in like an identity crisis for me. I have not committed to the Adam Ramzi name fully. I really only use it in public settings. I introduce myself as, I know like a lot of people have really committed to their persona, if that's what you want to call it. Yeah. I can't do it. I don't know. So I tend to kind of stick to Adam Ramzi as like the public figure. That's what like I'm known as globally, but people locally know me as Aram. And I think part of it is because I don't want to be known only as a sexual being, because I'm not only a sexual being. That is a huge part of who I am, but I'm also so many other things. So I think it's funny how we compartmentalize, like, because that's exactly what you do. Like in your Instagram presence, you're obviously this like very smart, very funny podcaster. But on your scruff profile, you're like, hi, I'm a dude who's looking for sex. And
let's be clear. It says my profile simply says the sentence, I'm into handsome men, if that's okay to say. That's like the only thing my profile says. But you're right. It's literally,
and that's very cut and dry. It's like, you're kind of like keeping it. I respond better to scruff profiles when they have a little bit of personality, when there is a little bit of wit and humor. And you're right. You're absolutely right.
Wow, this is now a full coaching session that I needed, Aram. I needed it.
I bring it out of people. I can't help it.
You really do. And I think that there's so much about your career and your fullness of who you are, Aram, that I want to get into. But before I get into, of course, your work in the pornography world, your work as a party host, your work as a podcaster yourself, I do need to ask you the famous podcast question. So, Adam Ramzi / my friend Aram, whose fault is it that you're gay? Who do we blame, babe?
Oh boy, gosh. Well, geez, where do I start? I don't know who I can blame exactly, but I do remember a very specific turning point, I suppose.
Tell me.
Did you ever see the movie Sliver?
I did not see
Sharon
Sliver.
Stone. Okay. Sliver was a movie that came out, I think, in 93. Very much an early 90s erotic thriller. Like, that genre of like, thriller that is very, very sexual, lots of nudity, lots of sex and boobs.
The cover of this, the poster is Sharon Stone. Seemingly, all you see is her face and sort of like a side kiss, and she seems like she's fully being railed, is what I surmise.
She gets railed a lot in this movie, but particularly by a certain gentleman named William Baldwin.
Yes.
And that was the first time I ever experienced an orgasm, was after watching that movie. And it was because I was somewhat simulating one of the scenes between these two actors. And he, in a weird way, if I really think about it, was like a formative visual for me as this like kind of buff, light skin, dark hair, blue eyes, hairy, fit figure.
Which, by the way, William Baldwin of the Baldwins, famously, which are all like kind of all hairy, somewhat thick.
Yes.
There's the SNL sketch with Adam Sandler and Alec Baldwin, where Alec Baldwin is a Boy Scout leader, and it's like weirdly, I think it's probably not an okay sketch in today's world, but I just remember like similarly a Baldwin's hairy chest did something for me. So you were sort of simulating, was it like a position from the scene in the movie, or was
what was
it?
So embarrassing. Yeah, kind of. I was just like, I just was having fun with some bedding and pillows and was like, this feels nice. Oh God, what's happening? That was different. And so I kind of was like, oh, this is like now my journey into like, 12-year-old me learning about my body
Yeah.
and like what are the visuals that are stimulating said activity.
Yes.
I do have an epilogue to this story, by the way, that I think you will love, if I may have a little divergence for a moment. Years later, when I was starting to be an active gay young adult going out in West Hollywood, I would go to a show at the now defunct bar called Foo Bar, where a Big Fat Dick used to happen. There was a Wednesday night show by a trans performer by the name of Candace Kane, who I'm sure many of you have heard of. Candace Kane would do this show, and I was such a fan of hers, and it was just, so much fun. And I kind of became like sort of her like fan friend during the time. Well, during that era, she became the first ever trans actress to play a trans character on a network television show called Dirty Sexy Money, in which she played the mistress of a character played by William Baldwin.
No.
So I told her this story, and she was like, oh my God, I'm going to tell him this tomorrow. And she did. And she told him. And the next week he was like, tell him I said hello. I'm so excited.
I just need to like take a second and acknowledge the incredible feeling for you to know that the person you first jerked your gurk to
knows about it.
Actually knows. I mean, like, can you imagine if like Chris O'Donnell as Robin were but actually I'm sure he has been told that he has been jerked off to by many gay boys. But like, I'm just like for me to be able to tell, God, who would it have been? So many of my own Baldwins, so many, like for them to hear those words, the thing is,
I have heard those words many times myself. Like, and like, it's very, very funny when somebody comes up to you and is like, oh my God, I've jacked off to you so many times. Is that weird to say? And I'm like, are you kidding? Is it weird? No, that's such an honor. I've been with you in your private moments. Like, has
anybody ever said that to you and it has led to an IRL sexual experience between you and that person?
So I'll say this. I think it has happened, but these are with people who are a little stealthier about it. That they kind of like, they played the longer game where like after we had a moment, they kind of like cop to the fact where they were like, I've thought about this so many times. Oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And I'm
then
kind of
how
like,
do you feel? How do you
I'm
feel?
like, oh, you like, it's flattering and it's sweet, but like, the thing is, I don't think I think of myself in those terms. I don't think of myself as like anything other than who I am. So like when people kind of treat me like I'm this otherworldly, like, I hate the word celebrity, but like celebrity figure.
Yeah.
It's always shocking and a little jarring to me.
Well, I'm sure it's because you are the type of person, it seems, that has a good sense of self and a groundedness. And I think that we live in a world when someone is a quote unquote fan, they treat you as if you are not of the same ilk, of the same species as the rest of human beings. But it's like that's honestly the most empowering thing I've learned from interviewing people like you and people on this podcast, which is like, oh, we're all just as unsure and fucked up and baggagey and
stars, they're just like us.
Stars are just like us in therapy. Are you in therapy, Adam?
Not currently. It's probably time I go back. I do have a therapist who I was seeing semi-regularly last year.
Well, listen,
and I took a little break.
You have a new home and a new year, and so maybe it's going to be a perfect opportunity.
Yes.
It's
Are
also
you
a good opportunity. Of course I am. Are you kidding me? Let me tell you the truth of the matter is that my true feelings about this time of year is that I do not love it. And part of the reason I do not love it is because not only is there all the chaos of the holidays and then a complete drop off in January where it's like no one's really working. A lot of people are either out of town or checked out. And my fucking therapist is rightfully taking her time to not work. So I'm like on like week 3 without therapy right now. I'm like, my active brain does not do great with this much downtime. I really enjoyed it for a week or two because I also had a pretty crazy end of last year. But like, I'm feeling like I've been a little depressed. I've been a little like luckily I've been able to like, I've been in enough therapy to do the right things to make myself feel better. I've been doing Silver Lake Reservoir walks with my dog. Eaten too much ice cream or smoked too much weed? Sure. But I'm not like in a destructive pattern. I'm just like clocking that I'm ready. In 2 days, I have my first therapy session. Back in 3 weeks. This, week, it's like work is going to start to get busy again. But to answer your question, yeah, babe, she's in therapy.
Yeah. Great.
I just need it.
I like is what I always say. It can only help.
It's really helpful for me. It's like I have a lot of big feelings and anxieties, and without that check-in, I'm still in a chapter of life that my critics and the difficult thoughts come back a little louder than I would like for them to. So that's why it kind
Very
of
well
checks.
Put.
Thank you. It does. But I think that one of the things I get from therapy that I also truly get from your podcast, Sorry for Asking, is just like the feeling of validation and not feeling alone. I think that talking about the shame of it all, I think that your podcast, for anybody who doesn't listen, it's basically Aram and Cole Connor are two adult film performers. They ask all the questions that you never thought to ask about creating and consuming adult films. But you had an episode very recently with Davey Wavy, which first of all was a great episode because he's been a part of the internet and like the YouTube birth for a million years. He has an interesting story because he lives in Rhode Island. He's still, he's doing Chimeros, like he's still doing porn, but he's also very much like detached from the WeHo LA gay world. What is your relationship to, I'll first ask, what was your first entree into the adult film world? Like if Sutton Foster was my musical theater entree, did you have a person or a film or a thing that got you interested in actually doing adult films?
I've been watching adult films since I was a kid. We had access in my childhood home to channels that children should not be watching. And so I was definitely, the curiosity was always there. And I
Are you talking like Skinamax?
No, more like the Spice Channel and like the Playboy Channel and those,
yes.
those things.
Sure.
And I like remember the first time I saw penetration. I remember the first time I saw gay sex on a video. I remember, I remember the first time I was able to purchase my own porn as an adult and like how exciting that was. And I remember living with roommates one day and then like leaving to go somewhere and being like, oh shit, I left porn on my computer. And then I remember being like, oh, I don't care. I don't care who finds the porn on my computer. How liberating that felt. Like
I felt my shoulders drop. I felt,
you know what I mean? Like that,
yes.
these are moments of coming of age that like nobody talks about.
Truly. From the family computer to your own horny device.
We all have those stories, and I love those stories. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast. It was kind of like a mission statement from the get-go when I started doing porn, which was when I was so I went to grad school for LGBT psychology. So that was like the initial track was I wanted to become a therapist to explore this stuff with people in the private, setting of a therapy room.
Yeah.
But this and that happened. During my grad school tenure, I got kind of hot and people started to notice. And like, I was approached by the head of Raging Stallion Studios. He reached out to me and was like, I saw your pictures. What can I do to convince you to work with me? I'll make you an exclusive. How can I sweeten this deal? And, I of course was like, no, I couldn't possibly, that's not where my life is headed. But then
I'm getting a master's degree, for God's sake.
Exactly. But then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, Jesus Christ. LGBT psychology, literally 80% of what you talk about in these academic settings is sex and sexuality.
Right.
So I kind of was like, well, this could be kind of like a flex. Like, what if I tried this? I could use the money, certainly. I mean, I'm waiting tables while in grad school. They're going to fly me to San Francisco to film. And, I have a little bit of an acting background. I get to flex those chops as well. And it might be kind of fun. And it turned out I was kind of good at it. And it was, a lot of those first few experiences were really positive ones. And there was born Adam Ramzi. And
It's like the modern version of being discovered at a mall in a way.
Like
It's a little
it really was a funny how it all happened. And yeah, like, and I always kind of thought like, you know, I'm not going to be exclusive. I'm not going to film like a lot of these other performers do where they like film all the time. And like, I was very mindful that I didn't want my relationship with sex to be so consumed with the work side of it that sex became like work. So it was kind of a fun little balance to strike. And you know, like, it taught me a lot about just my ego and a lot about, you know, rejection. And, you know, it actually was a big part of my self-actualization process was doing
Can I ask
porn.
How long ago was this? Because I feel like if you were
We're coming up on 12 years ago. It was
wow.
it was March of 2013, my first.
Well, I
scene.
asked that because it's such a evolved mindset to go into it with, because I think probably a lot of people have to develop their own sense of boundaries and their own sense of, you know, what do I want from my professional versus my personal life. But if you're going into it with that, did you find that you were able to maintain that balance with, you know, sex work being something that you were able to enjoy professionally, but it did not get into your personal enjoyment of sex, whether it came to dating or just pleasure?
It was, to me, that mental game that I played with myself was always a fun one. Like I tended to have fun with it. Did I have challenges and struggles throughout the process? 100%. There were definitely moments where I felt a little down on myself. I felt like, you know, I mean, it really tests your mental wherewithal to handle stuff like this. I mean, you know, you're going into, you're filming for Raging Stallion. Like, some of these guys are just jacked as fuck. They have 9-inch dicks. They have, you know, like, you know, they have like, and I never felt like I carried myself like a porn star, if you want to use that word.
Yeah.
But I was easy to work with. I had fun when anywhere I was. I tried to just kind of maintain just doing it my way.
Yeah.
And generally I was able to make friends and good connections in the industry.
Well, I
and
need
then,
you to
like,
know that Raging Stallion was huge for me and a huge early, like one of my first, I remember being like rear stable, fucking google.com. Because this is a gay ass podcast and because I also, you know, am a self-proclaimed journalist, it's important for me to ask, do you remember if your first scenes were they like, you are now Adam Ramzi and you're going to be railed through and through first and foremost? Or were they like, no, what do you want to do? Would you like to be the TOP? Would you like to be, you know, the party bottom? What was that, the first entree to your performing on camera?
I would say the first year was I maybe filmed 7 scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly those early experiences were good ones because I had this tendency to kind of want to fall in love with my scene partners. Like, that was how I was able to manage a fun environment. Like, I would be flirty and, you know, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But
Are you saying like while you were shooting, or was it like
like just for the day? You know what I mean? Just like having
see.
this like day-long adventure with one person where like you guys are in it together to like create this hot chemistry on camera for the audience to enjoy. But I also remember, maybe it was my 6th or 7th time filming. Steve Cruz was my director at that time. It was maybe our 4th time working together, 4th or 5th time. Like, he, you know, and the person that I was working with, I was not attracted to him. There was no chemistry. I kind of tried to do the whole like, hey, like, you and me, we're buddies through this, but he was giving me nothing. There was just, it was just like, so this was the first time that I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to this mental place in my head, think of the images that like turned me on, and that was the time that was maybe my 2nd time on camera as a top. The other times I was a bottom, because that's kind of how you start usually. They kind of work you up. And I just performed for the camera. That was like, I was just like, this was for me. He's not even there. He's just a hole. I'm just going to do this. And midway through the scene, Steve takes me aside and he goes, honey, this is your best work. You are killing it. And I remember like being like, what? Thanks, I guess. But in my head, I was like, that sucks. Like, he's saying that like this scene where I'm phoning it in my head, I'm phoning it in, and he's saying it's your best work. I spoke to one of the grips later, who I had made like struck up a friendship with, and I told him, I was like, "Yo, Steve said this was my best work," and I was like not feeling it at all. And he says to me, I'll never forget this. He was like, that makes perfect sense, and this is why. Because sometimes, especially for studio porn, when there isn't chemistry, the performance shows up. And think about it. Think about all the Raging Stallion scenes you've seen. Do they look like they're falling in love? No, they're like performing for the camera. They're making noise. They are twisting their body to camera so that you can see everything.
It's like more about the craft and the performance versus them actually being in love with their scene partner and like making love.
And this is what I found so amazing about that moment. It was a turning point for me where I realized not all studios are the same. Like, you look at Cocky Boys, for example, where they're like sweating and their hair is in each other's face and they're, you know what I mean? It looks very connected. Whereas like Raging Stallion, they're on like brightly lit boxes. Their bodies are greased up. And you know what I mean? Like it's just every studio does it differently. Every director does it differently. I mean, you're making a movie. Like
well, that's what people, when I think we're in an era where there's like so much more information about, every industry just because of the fucking internet. But I think especially when it comes to porn, like we now have the choice between people on Twitter just filming themselves in their bedroom. Then there's like the middle ground of like, OnlyFans creators who are doing it, sure, a little more DIY, but also there's a lot of, production that they're maybe doing. And then the studio side is the like far other end of it where it fully is multiple takes, and I'm sure I've even read like there's at times where like the bottom has to clean out again in between takes, or there's, the fluffing that of course has to happen. It's a little less hot than you would think, obviously, while you're watching it. But I think it's, I don't know, a testament to the people who've been able to, the fact that people are still buying porn is a testament to that it's still an art because it's so readily available.
Yes. I mean, it always will be on some level, like, because we like watching people fuck. Like, I can't help it.
It's the oldest profession.
There are times when I think to myself, am I ever going to get sick of watching porn? But I haven't yet. I still scroll through Twitter and look through stuff that gets me going. Like,
yeah. No, I don't think I've asked myself that, but I.
However, I will say that making it does lose its luster after a while, and I have found that like just what you were talking about with all these OnlyFans creators, who it's almost like they're kind of a studio in themselves. I thought when OnlyFans started, is what you mostly were doing was you were capturing something that was real. You were putting a camera on the corner, and you were like maybe getting some good angles, but now, because it's become such an industry into itself, people have, they have lighting, they have cameramen, they have scenarios now. And it's made me feel a lot less inspired to film for my OnlyFans, because I really just want to have sex and I just want to have fun. I just want to connect with somebody and see what happens on camera. But I'm realizing that the market has changed. Like, you have to find ways to make it a little interesting, make it a little...
Well, I'm
sexy.
sure it's especially for someone like you who has A, many skills, but B, also a diverse sort of range of work that you do. I mean, let's talk about it. You, of course, have the studio porn that you've done, the OnlyFans stuff, and then you also have your podcast, Sorry for Asking. You then produce all these parties, which I've been to many of them. I mean, Hot Dog you do with Mario Diaz, like, is a legendary LA party. For anybody listening who doesn't know, Hot Dog is on Sundays. It's at El Cid, and it's like this very incredible, horny outdoor indoor moment. The go-go's are incredible. First of all, since a lot of people listening probably have at least heard of Hot Dog, was Hot Dog immediately the success that it is now, where there's a line down the block, or did it take a while for like the word to catch on?
Hot Dog took a second. So Mario Diaz, who is the lead on Hot Dog, he has been a mentor of mine for a long time, one of my dearest friends. And he used to throw this weekly party called Big Fat Dick on Thursdays at Foo Bar, as we mentioned earlier. And, that kind of died with the pandemic. And he reached out to me and was like, do you want to do this party and be like my co-producer? And it was just that was such a huge thing to be asked. And I was so honored. I'm still so honored to be a part of it. And it's really changed the course of my life because now that's the career that I'm kind of focusing on right now is as an event producer. So to watch Hot Dog, he's done versions of Hot Dog off and on since like 2003, I want to say. So this version of it, the one at El Cid, outdoor, indoor, Sunday tea dance vibe. When it started, it was when the bars were still just coming back to life after the pandemic. So no, it wasn't a huge success right off the bat, but it was something different for LA that I think people kind of recognized very quickly.
Well, tell the girls what happens when you walk into the party and what's
so great. So El Cid is this random little spot in Silver Lake. It's like 100-year-old flamenco Mexican restaurant. It's not even like a restaurant where you can just go anytime and have dinner or lunch. Like there are performances and things that are scheduled where sometimes food is involved, sometimes it's not. And the way it looks from the street, it barely looks like anything. It's just this like awning over like a wall, and then you come inside and you go down these steps, and as you enter, you pay to get in. You're greeted by some kind of drag queen who offers you cups. We have a cup color code. This was Mario's idea, where there are 4 colors and they each represent kind of where you are in the sexual spectrum in terms of top, bottom, side, verse. And really, it's just really a way to get hyped up as you get in. The queens are very good at just being like, oh, you look so cute. Who are you? Is this your boyfriend? Welcome. What's your cup code? Great. Have a good time. Tip your go-go boys. And that's kind of how you start. And you descend into this beautiful sea of very, very eclectic and there's such a variety of people. And a lot of them are very hot. Go-go boys, we always dress the go-go boys in some kind of crazy look. There's a theme usually. There's usually a cisgender queen, faux queen, I guess is what you call them, on an exercise bike in one corner. We have a market up top where like queer vendors will like peddle their wares. There's a DJ and a dance floor inside. And it's just the place. I mean, people have said we've gotten successful enough. They're like, have y'all outgrown El Cid yet? We need a place with more capacity. Oh. But we think that the El Cid as the space for this particular event is such a part of the personality of the event. I don't think we're ever going to move it.
I mean, it does have an amazing flow, and I remember my first time walking in and having to make the decision of what cup am I going to carry. I mean, even then it was just like sort of a beautiful existential identity moment of like, how do I want to be perceived at this party? And of course, like, it's sort of like brings to mind like, oh my God, am I going to be a slut at this party is like the question that, and then of course, oftentimes I'm like, well, I would like to be, but will it happen? And the last time I was there, when I ran into you, I myself wasn't a slut, but a lot of my friends were able to like make out with people they'd never made out with before, or like, it's just I love the like, again, the charge of horniness and shamelessness. That's what it's all about to me.
That's a testament to how Mario builds events. Like he has always been like that. He loves sexy and he loves stupid. And like that is kind of the combination we're going for at Hot Dog. It's sexy and it's stupid. So everybody's pretenses are down and it gives them kind of, free reign to explore. It feels okay at a place like Hot Dog to want to like let your guard down a little bit and make out with boys and obviously be respectful and of course. Consent is sexy. But he's always kind of built his events around that premise. And I've learned a lot from him, and it's kind of what I'm going for with mine as well, as much as possible.
Well, I am going to be continuing to go to the Aram events, the Mario events, and do you want to manifest, like, is there, I mean, obviously I know you have other events too, like you've got the amazing Access Party, which there's another one in March that I saw. What are you manifesting for, like, as your event planning career is growing? Are we continuing to throw like these big gay parties, giving warehouse vibes? Are you going to at one point throw a sex party? Are you going to be throwing a white party? Like what are we manifesting?
You know, I'm just kind of riding this wave right now. Hot Dog's been going very well. I'm kind of the assistant on Hot Dog. I'm the lead on a party on Thursdays at High Tops called Gym Class, where my vibe there, I always say, is vintage, sporty, homoerotica. And you know, similar thing there where it just feels like a flirtier night. And it's a Thursday, so it's not, you don't have like the weekend riffraff, which I tend to avoid on in West Hollywood if I can. And you know, I've been asked to do a lot of parties in West Hollywood on the weekends, and I get very tempted by the money and
I'm
the
sure.
opportunity. And but then I kind of think to myself, you know, why would I throw something that I wouldn't necessarily attend myself?
Listen,
And
listen,
that's sort of
listen.
how I'm trying to manifest.
Well,
It's
that's
like,
been my relationship to the gay life in LA, especially because, you know, I've talked about this many times, but before I moved here, I actually did not have a super gay life when I was living in New York, even though I have gay friends there, of course, but I wasn't like going out a ton. I wasn't plugged into bigger groups. And I was certainly not having any sort of freak flag fly at all. Whereas now that I moved here, I've like been able to explore the places like Hot Dog. But yeah, like the weekend riffraff of WeHo has been something I've not really experienced since really my first year or two here, because I'm more of like the East Side vibe of, sure, is it hairier and less polished? Yes. But is it also like less, there's less pretense, there's more freedom to be whatever version of freak you are. And I think that that's like, it seems like you're plugged into a great balance of like non-pretension with a hotness, horniness that is in the intersection of that, which I think is like the perfect place to be.
That's what we want. We want everyone to feel welcome. And let me also say, like, I know a lot of times people, it's very trendy to say that the East Side vibe is like less pretentious than the West Side. But like, let me tell you this also, the pendulum swings. I know a lot of mean girls who live on the East Side.
Oh yeah.
They're you know, they wear their baggy shirts and their baseball caps and like, you know, and you know, the thing is, wherever you live in LA, if you're coming to Hot Dog, just come to have a good time. Like,
But you're also, you're leaning into something that I think is important to know, which is that no matter what group you are a part of, there are going to be a monster. There are going to be monsters out of any group. Like let's be clear here. I am, of course, a very proud member of the minority of gay people, of queer people. Are there monsters? You betcha. As a Jewess, am I so proud to be a Jewish person? Absolutely. Are there monsters within our community? But of course. I think it's like it does us a disservice to say like just because we're on the East Side or just because we're gay that it's like you're.
yeah, I think it's just such an easy target to say that like if you're from West Hollywood that you're automatically like this fake asshole, and it's just like it's just not fair. It's just not. I don't ascribe to it anymore. I think it's
people I love are in WeHo and will find themselves there on weekends, and I love them. But no, I think you're right. I think you're right. It is important to point out, but I think it's also important to point out when we talk about like the perception of communities. I just want to quickly ask you, since we're coming off of the holidays and we're like in this sort of, you know, either people saw their families or chose not to. How do you deal with being a part of, sure, producing these horny parties, doing porn work? How do you deal with the actual belonging or connection you feel to your family from birth? Is it tough for you to exist in an authentic way with them because so many parts of your life they would not understand?
I have been pretty lucky with my family. I'm very close to them. We've been through a lot. We had a very, very rough upbringing as a result of a very, very awful divorce between my parents. Thankfully, and obviously I'll keep this short, a lot has happened that has made us pretty strong. And I don't tell them everything. I think they generally have an idea. I think a lot of they had concerns, certainly, when they kind of learned about some things. But I think they know me well enough, especially lately, to see that, like, at least right now, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
So I may be doing it a little differently than they all did, but I think they could tell that I'm generally pretty happy. Sometimes I'm a little exhausted and maybe can be a bit of a sad boy, but like... But generally, like I think I have things kind of handled for the moment.
So they
And
they
they're
respect what you do, and they also respect that you
I wouldn't go
do
that
not need.
far.
Okay, they respect not knowing everything that you do,
Sure.
and you enjoy the boundaries of letting them have a general feeling of love and support towards you without knowing the nitty
Yeah.
gritty.
Yeah, like my mom is I'm very close with my mom and she knows kind of everything. She listens to the podcast. Which is
Oh,
like, yeah, she's actually been on the podcast. That's a great episode if you haven't heard
oh,
that one yet. And my dad, my siblings, they have an idea, but they would rather not ask questions, I think. And there's like nieces and nephews now in the mix, and it's been really sweet. My family situation, sometimes I say it's like a blessing and a curse because they're local, they live nearby.
that is
So,
a blessing and a curse.
well, because yeah, I mean, I have a big family and I want to stay connected to them, but like, damn, dude, I'm a busy girl. And like, having also family to like sometimes go and see, like, I moved away to San Francisco for a few years, like when this whole porn career started. And like, as much as I missed them, like, I was just kind of like, wow, this frees up so much of my time not having
I
to,
can
to
only
go
imagine.
visit my
I do
family.
not live geographically close to my family, and
Most of my friends don't. Like,
yeah. No,
yeah.
it's an interesting, we're like on two sides of the coin, because I think like you have the privilege of loving your family and being close to them. But you're right. There's like a burden of sort of finding your adult life as just a human being, period, that is
Yeah.
separate but yet still connected. And then of course the added layer of like doing something that a lot of especially straight people would not understand. I ask because I myself am still working through that, my adult relationship with my family, especially when it comes to having a gay podcast, when it comes to working in the entertainment industry, which is something they do not understand. And I think there's like, I come from a culture of zero boundaries, and so I'm like trying to figure out, well, how can I, like, of course, feel connected while adding boundaries, but also like if I want to share something exciting.
I've always very much maintained being myself while also being like respectful and upholding a boundary. They don't need to know everything. They don't need, like I, so I think that it's been kind of a fun little trick to pull off where it's like, I'm still going to be very much me, but I'm also going to be, I'm going to like, I bring home my boyfriend to Christmas and to Thanksgiving, and they're all cool. Like, it's like my entire we've come a long way with each other, is I guess the
I'm
best
so
way I could sum
happy.
that up. And I'm very
I mean,
privileged. I'm very grateful. We've come a long way. Things
but it's
started
also,
out rocky.
well, and I think it's good that you're being honest about that, because it's a testament to fucking growth and sticking with your own, what feels good to you. You cannot sacrifice who you are in front of your family, but you can figure out a way to coexist that honors both. And obviously, since you mentioned the boyfriend, I'm going to just have to quickly ask before we get to our final stage of this interview. You are currently dating someone who is an incredibly, I've just happened to seen them out in the world, incredibly sexy person. Have I met them? Yes, I have. Am I a big fan? Yes, I am. Can you tell us, what has your relationship been just to dating when it comes to like working in an industry like you work in? I mean, have you always been able to date within the industry, or is this something that's new to you?
This is new, actually. I don't think I've ever dated anyone within the industry. There's been a couple times where I've been getting close to somebody who their curiosity was piqued enough that they decided over time that they wanted to kind of dabble.
Uh-huh.
I am currently in a relationship with somebody who I met because we had mutual friends and I had seen his work on the internet and I knew that he was a part of this industry, or at least a recent addition to the world of internet slutdom. But I really liked the way that he was presenting himself. And our story is a very sweet one. And I can't say that he's like anyone I've met before in the industry. or at all. Like he's so amazing. And I'll just give a little teaser. He has been on this podcast. I'm not going to say who it is because that's just not how we roll. But he's been on this podcast and he's amazing. He's very smart. He's just a unicorn. So I never predicted this. I can't say that like, oh yeah, you should definitely date within the industry because you have this thing in common. But now that I'm dating him specifically, I do like that we have this in common because I don't have to explain it. There are so many times I've heard people who are performers and content creators who will start dating somebody outside of the industry who always says they're cool with it and always, and this isn't always, I'm not going to say it's always like that, but often I've heard these stories where somebody is like, they say they're cool with that at first, but over time something starts to change. And it's just, we're still so inundated with normative messaging of like what relationships should be like. And,
Oh, yeah.
of course I know that, all of us, even me, we still have caveman brains deep inside our heads. And so when, your primary partner is like, well, I'm going to go fuck this person on camera so that I could put it on the internet in a few weeks and make money off of it. It takes a lot of adjustment.
Yeah.
To be able to be like, cool, have fun, enjoy, love you, see you when you're done. Like, it's just, not everybody has that skill. You can practice it and get better at it. But like the fact that he and I share this, he's literally filming right now. And I was just like, cool, I'm going to be on Eric's podcast. So let's talk later.
You're both doing the gay. You're both living your gay
I know.
personal and professional lives.
Gay LA boys.
Gay LA boys. Do you find that you would ever film? Have you filmed with him professionally? Would you?
We have actually. That's kind of how we started. Is he moved to LA and some friends from San Francisco, which is where he lived before, told me like hey, you've got to meet this guy if you haven't already. You guys get along so well. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, he's hot as fuck, so of course I would love to meet him. We met at a party and we scheduled immediately something to film together, and which was great. And then it wasn't until a couple months later that we actually started hanging out more. And we filmed a few times because, back then it was still kind of casual.
Yeah.
And we filmed a few times. Once we became much closer, I actually had a deep hesitation because I just didn't want to be like the couple that films together all the time. I have a weird aversion to that. I'm happy for guys who do it, and especially if they do it well, but I've just seen it like not go well with a lot of guys. Like,
you're trusting your gut. It's the beautiful Aram boundary that we love. Come on.
There's
now.
just such a risk. There's such a risk when it's like, we're a couple and we're going to film together. Like, there's always going to be performers who are going to prefer one over the other. And I just didn't want to ever risk that. However, we are going to film next week with somebody who is dear to us both. And it's going to be the first time we've filmed together, like in a 3-way situation in many, many months.
Wow.
And I'm allowing myself to be excited about it.
I'm allowing myself to be excited too. Oh, I can't wait to support small,
you're so sweet.
Take two, big businesses. Well, listen, Aram, we're sadly getting to the end of this interview, which is cuckoo luku, but I need to ask you the final podcast question, which is Aram / Adam Ramzi. If the world was ending, you could only save one character actress. Who would you save?
Okay, all right. I have some counter questions. Are they living or dead?
Either or.
Okay. And when you say character actress, I know you gave a little bit of a prompt on that, but I mean, leading ladies can wear wigs too.
I have made more than one gay guy mad by saying a leading lady can be a character actress. She just needs to have a specificity to her personality, and she can't only be ingenue. That's where I feel. I'm a little more lax about character actress nomenclature. However, she needs to have definitely, she can't just be ingenue. It's not Blake Lively.
Okay, so I have 4 that I thought of.
Ooh.
Can I share them all? I'll be very quick.
Please,
I'll be very
please.
quick. And these are mostly just people I feel like I'd really enjoy having a conversation with.
Well, that's one of my favorites.
So Meryl Streep.
Huge.
I just feel like she would just be so much fun to just hang around.
There's a video of her that just popped up of her running into Carol Burnett and them having a little kiki. And I was like, see, that hangout over Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we love Meryl.
Kate Blanchett.
Huge.
Have you ever seen her in an interview?
Of course, the gay.
She's fascinating. And she's like funny in her own way. And she always asks questions back to the person who's asking her questions. And I think I was just like, wow, she sounds like she'd be really fun to have a conversation with.
Well, and
Sarah
as gay men, we
Paulson.
also love beautiful, tall women. And she, to me, is one of the most classically beautiful people on the planet. Go on.
Yeah. Sarah Paulson was the other one just because I think she just makes me laugh all the time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's a witty bitch under the influence.
And then I was also my toss up for the fourth spot was between Viola Davis and Diane Wiest. Just because I just feel like the two of them are so nurturing. There's something very...
And powerful.
Yes. Well, Viola Davis has definitely the powerful thing down. Diane Wiest, she kind of carries it in a different way. She's a little drier.
Yes.
Which
you're
I
right.
love.
There's a nurturing power like Diane Wiest, I think, would be if you ever needed advice, she would say it in a very quiet whisper.
Yes.
And Viola Davis would sort of get closer to you, look deep into your eyes, and have more of a bass.
A different quiet whisper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, more of a bass to her quietness.
Yes.
Absolutely. Wow. I love that. These are all you have such good taste in character actresses. And I think that you've nailed the mission because you've done two things here. You've named really great actors and you've named people that would be guaranteed an incredible hang. And that to me is what makes us love our character actresses because we envision them whispering the things we would like to hear our own mothers or somebody say to us.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for indulging me with 5 instead of 1.
Thank you. I'm so you came to this podcast with such a gorgeous energy, and I'm so grateful that you came on. I truly am so thankful to you for doing the Lord's work with taking away shame from sex on your podcast, for producing these amazing parties, and of course, just for being who you are and coming on That's a Gay Ass Podcast. Aram, tell the girls where to follow you and what you like to plug.
Okay. So my Instagram is PrinceJasmine_. That's kind of my main account. I have other accounts as well. And again, identity crisis. I'm still deciding if I should just have one or if I can do these many because I have one is the Adam one is the Aram one. You know how it goes. But Prince Jasmine is the main one. I also have an X if you want to see the more spicy stuff. Adam Ramzi _XO. But really all of this can be found, including my access to the podcast at adamramzi.com. ADAMRAMZI.com.
It is
that
all
where you
linked
can find everything.
in the description. You'll find all those links there. And please, yes, follow Adam, listen to his podcast, watch his incredibly hot videos. And I cannot wait to see you again. Maybe not as my neighbor, but still as gay, horny Angelinos.
Well, hot dog is in a few hours. So if you're feeling it, I'll see you there. Eric, thank you so much for this. Your podcast is amazing. I'm so honored to be on. I appreciate you very much. Thank you,
my friend. I'll see you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining me here on That's a Gay Ass Podcast. And I have to tell you a fun story is that after we recorded this, I did go to Hot Dog where I did see Adam himself, gave him a very delicious hug, and a couple people who listened to the podcast stopped me to say hello. So if that was you, you made my fucking night. And God bless. Really, God bless America. Have an amazing rest of your gay ass week. And I will see you next week for another incredible guest. And for the love of Goddess, stay gay. Bye. You've been listening to That's a Gay Ass Podcast, hosted by me, Eric Williams. If you want to see and hear more, make sure you subscribe to us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or Patreon at Gay Ass Podcast. That's a Gay Ass Podcast is executive produced by Eric Williams and produced by Nathanael McClure. We'll see you next week.